It's September 1st, 2024, and I'm going through my second watch through of the 2022 ICT mentorship, and I've kind of run across what feels like a pretty good aha moment that I wanted to document and kind of talk myself into. I'm on episode 7 and ran across a nice piece of wisdom from Michael regarding bias and how he approaches it, especially the difficult days. So he's talking about this run here where it's decidedly bearish from here to here. So every day throughout in this leg, that was his bias, was expecting lower prices, and then took out the sell side, retraced back up, and then started to consolidate around the equilibrium area. And at this point, he was kind of uncertain of what his bias would be until he got more information, more price action to go off of. And that's something that I struggle with just in general, is having a good bias. There are days where I'm pretty confident in what I've seen and my analysis, and there's others where I'm not. So what he recommends is to just kind of, on those days where you don't have a very strong bias, is to just stick to the lower time frames and look for those smaller liquidity pools and just expect smaller moves with lower leverage until you have more information to work on. And I was reflecting back on some older trades where I sometimes am able to do this subconsciously, where those days where I'm struggling with my bias, whether it be something like this where it is kind of ambiguous, or whether it's just something I'm not seeing, but I get kind of more into a panic mode and then subconsciously just stick to the lower time frames, but kind of in that panic state. So it's a good reminder that on those days it's okay to not have a bias, and I can just trade accordingly with the expectation of smaller moves on smaller time frames, and just be okay with that and take the small consistent wins, rather than trying to force a bias where it may or may not exist, or where it might be completely backwards. So that was a good reminder. So this upcoming week I'll be practicing consciously picking which of those two lenses I'm looking at my trades through. Whether it's I have my bias and I'm comfortable with it, so I'll be targeting the external range liquidity and kind of the bigger moves, or if I'm not sure of a bias or I don't have one and I'm just going to stick to the lower time frames and look for the smaller moves. And I think that'll help me be more comfortable trying to target the bigger moves, because I will know that I'm confident in my bias and will be trading accordingly. Whereas I know that in the logical part of my brain that I should be trading with a bias on the bigger moves, but sometimes that doesn't connect. So I'm going to work on making that a conscious choice. I'm kind of going through some back testing and ran into something fairly similar, so I'm using the replay. I like to go back and just kind of cut off the right side of the chart. I find it easier to study that way. I know he says looking at everything and pretending you're seeing it happen real time is just as effective, and that could be, but this is just kind of the way I've come to do it. But there was a kind of an area here where there's that definite bearish leg, and then it's coming back up into the equilibrium area, and there is maybe a little bit more here to go off of, but it's still kind of in that ambiguous area as far as I can see it, where it's not sure if it wants to go up or down. And so I was practicing looking at the lower time frames and just kind of focusing on this, and then looking back and see what it's doing over here. So it's a good reminder to understand that it's okay to not have a complete bias for a day, but then I need to be careful that I don't start using that as a crutch and kind of get stuck in the lower time frames, because the higher time frame context is still king. So I need to make sure that I'm kind of walking that line. So good nuggets as always. And I'm going to finish out the rest of this video and see if there's any other things that pop up. So I'm coming back to this the next day, Sunday, actually Monday, because it's Labor Day weekend. September 2nd at 9:10 p.m. my time, so that would be 11:10 p.m. market time. So I finished the episode 7 of the 2022 mentorship that I was working on, and then also finished episode 8. So I have those completed for the second time, and I'm now kind of prepping for this upcoming week and identifying the things that I want to keep in mind and goals to achieve for this week. And I've gone back and reviewed some of my trades from last week as well, and kind of just brushed up on the things I did well and didn't do well. So first and foremost, something I struggled with last week was having a good clean markup for every trade that I can go back and review. So I'm going to try to make sure this week that I have that I put a little more effort into making sure that those are there. Like I said in that previous video, I try to have those done, as I'm seeing things form and as I'm looking for setups, but I didn't last week. I'm using the excuse that it was a busy work week, which it was, but of course, no excuses are good. So I'm going to be working on that this week. Second goal is to tomorrow, when I'm doing my pre-market prep, I'm going to get up 15 minutes earlier or so and go through my trading plan again and just kind of do a review session, make sure that all of my rules and regulations are firmly implanted. And then I broke my trading plan on Friday of last week, so I'm going to focus on not breaking my trading plan this week. What is the purpose of having a plan if I'm breaking it? So if I see a good trade forming that is outside of the times that I have allotted for trading, I will just pretend that I'm taking it and just focus on doing a really good journal for it and paying attention to what ends up happening with it for study purposes, but I'm not breaking my trading plan. Number 3, in I think it was episode 8 of the mentorship, he mentions the 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. window. That is his, I think it's more applicable. It's more, I think it came more from Forex, but it still applies to futures. His New York AM kill zone. So I'm going to focus on only taking setups between 7 and 10. So I did a little bit of back testing. It does seem pretty reliable that stuff forms between that time. So if it's 11:15, again, I'm just going to mark it up, and it's close enough probably to the lunch hour that there might be some funny business going on. I've taken some trades around that time and they have not worked out, so I think I should probably formally add it to my trading plan, but for right now, I have a note that will be up on a sticky note, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Santa's coming to town, and that's the only time I can trade for those setups. And then if I miss something in that window, then I'm waiting for the PM session to look for something. The next one is to continue to work on my bias and continue putting the work in for that. But if there's a day where I'm just not seeing it, or maybe there actually isn't really a definitive bias, that's okay, and I will just focus on the lower time frames and finding turtle soups on those, the 5 or the 2 or whatever it may be, and just look for the smaller liquidity pools and expect and target smaller moves with internal range liquidity. And the last one, the episode 7 that I just finished, part of it was on the smart money tool divergence between the indices, and that's something that I'm fairly comfortable with seeing. It makes sense, and I kind of understand that it's not the initiator of a trade, but it's a good way to confirm an existing idea. But this was pretty early on, and I was kind of overwhelmed with everything that I was learning, so I just stripped it down to really the basics of it takes buy side or sell side liquidity, market structure shift, fair value gap, and that was it. So I think it would be good to start incorporating the smart money tools again now that I've kind of gotten the basics more or less down and I'm comfortable with seeing them. So I'm going to work on trying to use that a little bit more and fold that into my strategy. So I have a new couple of windows in TradingView where I've got all the big 3 indices, and I can watch for those again. And then this is my kind of entry and markup window over here. So I will be incorporating those along with the other things I've mentioned. So those are kind of my study and strategy goals for this week. And then my kind of target monetary goal for this week is to meet or exceed the previous week. Or I guess it would be 2 weeks ago now, not last week, but the week before. I had a $500 net profit week. So I would like to try to target that again. And then kind of secondarily to that, if I'm not able to get to that, I would like to at least beat last week of the $230 net week. So those are my goals for this upcoming week. I'll be studying my trading plan tomorrow morning and just kind of ruminating on these again, and we'll see how it goes. I will catch you in the next one.